Bangladesh, living on borrowed time, where climate change is not just a rising concern, it is water rising around your home, where homes disappear every day, and the ones that are left are constantly being battered by increasingly violent natural disasters. One of those, Cyclone Isla, in 2009, caused more than 1 million people to lose their homes. That's half the population of Paris, homeless in just one day.
স্রোত আসে পাকা আসছে পানি দিয়ে পাকা মানে 10 মিনিটের ভিতরে ঘর বাড়ি সব শেষ করে দিল.
Isla also left an estimated 20 million people at risk of post-disaster diseases. Bangladesh is not waiting. Communities are building resilience, and BRAC is standing right next to them. Every home in this village is now disaster resilient, and the local school doubles as a cyclone shelter. Communities help to build these new structures, and they maintain them. Climate change education is being incorporated into the school curriculum. Drinkable water is often the hardest to find in flooded areas. Storm surges cause salt water to intrude into fresh water, and waterborne diseases thrive in flooded areas. Pond sand filters, co-funded and maintained by communities, provide clean water. Sunshine is powering water pumping systems. Communities maintain the pumps and pipe networks. Just one solar-based pump means 500 houses with clean water. Climate change hits women the hardest. Men migrate to find new opportunities, but women often stay in villages. Overnight, women become solely responsible for their households. Women's groups collectively face trauma and work together on solutions. Leadership training, hands-on skills, and seed capital grants help women to start businesses. With land disappearing every single day, there is almost no space left for agriculture. With pond dike farming, farmers grow seasonal vegetables along the edges of their fish pond enclosures all throughout the year. Short duration, high yield, inundation resistant and saline water resistant crops are being planted. Eco-friendly systems like sex pheromone traps and bird stands are being used. Farmers are collectively deciding crop types and cropping patterns. Different new crops like maize and sunflowers are becoming popular. How can we make a change, share solutions, build resilience, adapt as a community? Climate change is the biggest global crisis we have ever faced, but the world has never been more connected, more aware, or more equipped to face it. Join the world's biggest family.
Tea, one of the world's most consumed drinks, second only to water. Consequently, it's also one of the world's leading commodities, worth around $50 billion a year. A commodity that is a vital source of income for certain developing countries around the world, but particularly in Africa, which produces almost 23% of global tea exports. Tea contributes 26% of Kenya's and 8% of Malawi's export earnings and provides direct and indirect livelihoods to millions of people, particularly in rural areas. Globally, Kenya is one of the top 3 tea exporters in the world, while Malawi's tea crop is a vital ingredient in blended teas.
Kenya is basically exporting most of the teas to about 95%. Only 5% is consumed locally. And it has really assisted in the infrastructural development within the local areas where teas are produced. The ripple effects, particularly from the incomes that are generated from tea, is huge.
Tea farmers in particular earn their living from tea, and it is currently serving slightly over 600,000 farmers that we manage as a small-scale sector. We depend on slightly over 3.5 billion.
Kenya and Malawi are amongst only a few countries that boast the very specific climatic conditions that tea requires to thrive.
In terms of tea growing, there are a number of factors that have to be considered. The main ones being rainfall. Tea requires about a minimum of 1,200 millimeters of rain per annum. but also in terms of the temperatures, the ideal temperature ranges between 12.5 degrees Celsius and 35 degrees Celsius.
However, despite the ever-growing demand for tea crops are facing a challenge beyond the farmers' control: climate change.
The impact of climate change on the smallholder subsector is the fact that there will be reduced yields. The yield, to some extent, is affected by issues of rainfall, which has been a bit erratic. The distribution has been affected because of the issues that are related to climate change.
I've been in the area for the past 29 years. We have seen some changes in the weather pattern. We have seen fewer months of rain. So on the smallholder sector, it has been a big problem, and as a result, production in those fields has gone down.
When it is in good season, naweza pick it 600 kg kwa month. Lakini wakati kuna drought, nikashuna kama 100 hivi kwa mwezi.
Ya panopa tukufuti kidapo 14 drame meti malandira yasiana ndi meneti maipezera poyamba. Kuipa kwake ndizokoti zokolola za sinta simeneti makolela poyamba.
We also have temperature fluctuations, and what we have seen over the past 30 years is that temperatures are on the rise, and should there be any rise in temperatures, that technically would affect the production of tea.
Because we have high temperatures, we are having a lot of difficulties in raising up new crops. Most of the tea will even die because of high temperatures. So you can see that things are not okay.
Climate change is impacting on people and their livelihoods already.
The farmers have not been used to this issue of unpredictability. In the recent past, you could predict the seasons. When it rains, when there are storms, when it dries, but now it's a bit hard because you're also getting incidences that we didn't have before, like issues of storms coming, a lot of hailstorms, and coming with greater frequency than before.
The situation has the potential to be extremely serious for both countries. These challenges are exacerbated by the fact that tea requires long-term planning.
The economic life of a tea bush is at least 60 years. If you plant today, it will take you about 3 to 5 years for the field to get established. But then for you to get the economic yields, it takes about 7 to 9 years.
The long economic life of tea plants means decision-relevant information around potential future climatic changes is essential to inform investment as well as adaptation planning. Recognizing the need for this information, the Future Climate for Africa program has been working in Malawi and Kenya on a project called Climate Information for Resilient Tea Production, or CI4T.
So the CI4T project came about because of the recognition that we'd produced climate briefs for what the future climate of Malawi might be like, but in very general terms, just in terms of average temperature and average change in rainfall. And really what we recognized was that we needed to tailor that information to specific metrics. What were the things that they could see that was starting to affect tea production now, and what do the research stations, what are they preparing for in terms of climates in the future?
In order to generate the most appropriate and decision-relevant information, a new set of climate metrics were developed, which included information such as the number of consecutive hot days or rainy days that would affect tea production and quality for specific seasons or months. One of the early challenges was finding reliable data and at the specific scale required.
The information that climate models provide are at a grid scale, which is much larger than a local scale at which information is actually required. So to generate information at a local scale, we have used a novel approach of combining station observations, global climate model projections, and projections from high-resolution convection permitting model for Africa, which is called CP4A. We have tailored the future climate projections to capture location-specific responses for the future for Malawi and Kenya.
To overcome some of the challenges and to help create climate models at a scale never seen before in the region, the project has been working in a particularly collaborative way.
Really importantly, it builds on strong in-country collaboration links we have, both with universities and with the Met services in both countries. And what has been added to in this particular project is the close collaborative working with the research stations in both countries and also with the tea producers and the smallholder associations themselves. So they're the ones actually testing which parameters we're looking to analyse the models for. So they're not using the models themselves, but they're guiding us on what they want the models to tell them about in the future, and then in workshops at the end we're asking them to look at those outputs and think what can they do now in terms of adaptations and what will be needed 20 or 30 years into the future.
The Climate Information for Resilient Tea Production project is an important start to meeting the climate challenges that affect these countries.
It can help them in understanding what are the uncertainty ranges in the future to plan and invest in different adaptation options for the long-term sustainability of the sector.
With simple adaptation measures to start with, like irrigation schemes, soil water conservation, afforestation in the upslopes, maybe shade trees in areas which are particularly vulnerable to the hottest temperatures during the day, that we can start to continue or sustain the successful tea production and really feed in for the lives of smallholder farmers and those working on the plantations.
The results so far are making an impact on future planning.
After knowing what the projections will be like, maybe in terms of temperature or in terms of rainfall, then one will be able to engage into practices that will help to lessen some of the negative impacts that those projections or those changes are going to come with.
The information is being used by various stakeholders to assist the industry.
And we've also tried to work with government officials, NGO officials to raise awareness in terms of how they can use the models, but also to reach to more farmers, especially smallholder farmers. And we are also expecting to have a lot of projects coming in, and would like to try the information that we've gained now and contribute to the coming interventions, especially in terms of research, capacity building, but also innovation.
So having a dense network of stations in most areas is really going to help, because it will address the local variability, which is the main driving factor of weather and climate in Malawi.
Looking forward, more information is needed for better planning and policy creation.
I think what we need to do based on the findings of our research is to make sure that we are putting better plans, especially plans that handles climate change, plans that handles environmental degradation, but also plans that handles issues of energy. If we put those things in place, then the crop has got a future.
Whilst climate change poses significant risks to the tea sector in the region, farmers and other stakeholders are starting to take heed and develop responses. Increased investment in research collaborations to assist these stakeholders is key to building resilience to a changing climate and protecting economic advances.
The future of the industry is delicate. We need to take more attention and focus more on ensuring that the environment is well preserved as a means to mitigate the adverse weather conditions that have been realized. We continue encouraging our farmers and guiding them. We also facilitate training programs to ensure that they are well informed on these changes that may threaten their future.
We just thankful that people are interested in researches like these ones, which will really help us plan better. This is why we have trained our farmers to grow these new clones, protect the environment, and so many things to do with climate change. It's worrisome, but we've seen tea trying to survive. So tea is only crop that can make our children, even the grandchildren, survive for the future.
climate change is going to be bad. We don't know exactly how bad, but general estimates range from pretty bad to really, really bad. Depending on how you project the growth of carbon concentration in the atmosphere, average surface temperatures could climb 5 degrees Celsius or higher. This could lead to sea levels rising over 2 meters by 2100. Policymakers at the local, state, and national level have taken some steps to avert the crisis. Renewable portfolio standards and mileage guidelines for cars have become popular tools for limiting carbon emissions, but the consensus among scientists is that much more needs to be done. The problem is, there are few issues as polarizing as climate change.
So it's very, very cold out, very unseasonal. So here, Mr. President, catch this.
But what if I told you that there's a policy solution that might be able to bridge the gap between progressives and conservatives, environmentalists and businesses, climate hawks and climate skeptics? That policy is called the Great Swap. Let's take a closer look. This is British Columbia. It's home to the world's biggest hockey stick, the longest unsupported cable car at 9,921 feet, and it's one of the only places in North America with a tax on carbon emissions. British Columbia levies a tax of $30 for every metric ton of carbon dioxide emitted. For perspective, the average US household generates 41 metric tons of CO2 emissions every year. BC's carbon tax raises the price of gasoline by about 20 cents per gallon, and it raises electricity prices by about a penny per kilowatt hour. To offset the cost for taxpayers, the BC government has instituted several tax cuts in other areas. This makes their carbon tax revenue neutral. In other words, all the money that comes in is paid back to taxpayers. Now, BC is a small province with only 4.6 million people, and its carbon tax has only been in effect for
Climate change has a deep global impact at an unprecedented scale. The rise in sea level, the proliferation of fires, the increase in temperature have an effect on all of our lives. Over 180 countries around the world have committed to take environmental sustainability actions to limit these effects. To reach this goal, the contributions of civil society are essential. In Argentina, Chile, Colombia, Costa Rica, Peru, Mexico, and Jamaica, there currently exist best practices of citizen engagement for mitigating and adapting to the effects of climate change, and effective citizen participation counts. To learn more, download Governments and Civil Society Advancing Climate Agendas at WeConnect 3. Get the facts and get the skills.